moving on to RFK Jr.'s town hall. Now, to my surprise, a couple of people contacted me and said they didn't even know there was another town hall. I don't know what to tell you. This was actually on Fox News. Does seem like it wasn't advertised as much, maybe. I don't know. But there are two parts that I do want to focus on in this particular town hall. Now, Sean Hannity hosted this discussion. I want to start from the very beginning in reference to why he's running for president. There's a couple of things I did notice here and there. I don't know if everyone in the audience is necessarily an RFK supporter. I don't know if everyone in the audience is necessarily conservative or Democrat, if it's mixed or whatever. But he did get a standing ovation here. So shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. And let's go ahead and get started with the town hall.
Have a seat. How are you?
Very well.
They're all here to see me. They didn't know. I'm kidding. You have a lot of fans here. I guess my first question is an obvious one, but maybe we'll learn something. You're challenging a sitting U.S. president in your party. You have to have good reason to do so. Tell us what it is.
Well, you know what? I saw, first of all, thank you for having me, Sean. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I saw a poll yesterday afternoon that said that in 1985, 85% of Americans were proud to be American. 85% of Americans between 18 and 30 years old. And a poll taken last week of people that same age, of Americans that same age, say that only 42% are proud to be American. I want my children to grow up as proud of this country as I was. And, you know, I grew up at a time when we believed with really good reason that this country was the greatest country in history, and that we were a moral authority around the world, that we were, and there was plenty of evidence that the world wanted our leadership. They knew the difference between leadership and bullying, but people all over the world looked to the United States of America for leadership. When my uncle was president, he lived up to that role, and there is now more statues to him, more boulevards named after him, more avenues, more universities in Africa and Asia and Latin America than any other president. And it evinced because he didn't focus on shooting people and on he never sent combat veteran abroad or combat soldier abroad to die.
So he's talking about JFK's presidency, how JFK chose to help out some African countries in reference to education, and how he was not willing to send U.S. troops abroad. One thing I will say, though, and I notice he tends to do this a lot, I think that when you're the one that's running, and I get it from the very beginning when I covered his announcement on the ground in Boston, he talked a lot about his uncle and his father. Like, he talked for a long time. That was a long speech, but he talked a lot about his uncle and his father. But I think going forward, I think people kind of want to hear, what are you going to do? And not necessarily what your father did and what your uncle did. I think it's getting to the point, especially when we get to next year, 2024, it's getting to the point where people want to know, what are you going to do, though? We know what JFK did. We know what RFK, did. What are you going to do? What are your plans? So I think the focus should be more so that. And I think it's eventually going to get to the point where, like, he's not going to be on a debate stage. He's not going to be on a debate stage. But if this debate between him and Cornel West does happen, I know, that's something we're trying to get to happen over at RBN. If that does happen, you can't come with my dad did this and my uncle did that. You got to tell people exactly what you want to do and what you are going to do. I think after a while, that's going to become redundant and people aren't going to want to hear that as much anymore. I get it. When he first announced on the ground in Boston, that made sense because he was here in Boston. It was the first announcement and this is where they are all from. But going forward, I think he needs to focus more so on what he's going to do, not what those who came before him.
He sent 16,000 military advisors to Vietnam and then awarded them all home 1 month before he died, and they were allowed to participate in combat exercises. Some of them did. And instead, he sent Peace Corps volunteers. He created the Alliance for Progress. He created USAID. He wanted to put America on the side of the poor all over the world and on the side of democracy, but not at the force of a gun. In this country, you know, I grew up at a time that was called the Great Prosperity, when we created the middle class, which was the greatest economic engine ever created, the American middle class, and it was the foundation stone of our democracy.
This is another thing I want to point out that I've noticed when we're looking at things economically. Everybody talks about the middle class, but you rarely hear them mention poor. You know, what about the people who are poor? We bring up this issue that the middle class is shrinking, but as the middle class shrinks, where are those people going to? Right? Those people are either moving towards working class. Some working class people are moving towards poor. Like, we have to make this connection. And I think that's really important. All of them are going to do this. I'm telling you, 2024, all of these candidates are going to talk about, we need a prospering middle class. We got to save the middle class, but you never hear them mention people who are poor. It's almost as if they're just forgotten about. They're a lost cause. What do we need to focus on them for? That's what it feels like sometimes.
A guy asked me, a New Yorker editor who interviewed me a couple of weeks ago, said to me, what qualifies you to be president? You've never been in Congress. You've never been a governor. You've never been in the Senate. And for me, that's probably the best qualification. Because I'm not saying anything bad about people. I think most people who are in public office are there because they want to be good citizens. They want to be good public servants.
So this is a good point that he brings up when he says that, you know, maybe it's a good thing that he hasn't actually been in office, that he hasn't held like a political position before. That is one thing I do agree with. Like I said before, look at all the people that we have right now that are in office that have been there for years, or they started as like city councilors. Like Ayanna Pressley, for example, started as a city councilor in Boston and then moved up to a congresswoman. But we've been doing it that way for so long. And so one of the things I will say is that maybe it's a good thing to have someone in there that's not, you know, a politician, that hasn't held political office. So I agree with him on that.
System nowadays tends to co-opt you. And, you know, to run for senator in this state, Sean, it costs $100 million. And that means that you have to spend most of your time jetting between Southampton and Palm Beach and Los Angeles and hang out with billionaires who are going to give you money.
So he said you have to spend your time between like South Beach and Los Angeles and hang out with billionaires that are going to give you money. But that's exactly what he's doing. You see, I listened to this entire town hall, and that was the first thing that jumped out at me, is like, whoa, that's what he's doing. We talked about this. We talked about the money. Nothing changes for me on this. Nothing changes for me when it comes to billionaire money and this issue of billionaires donating to these campaigns. So it does not change for me that David Sachs, who is a billionaire, is donating to RFK Jr.'s campaign and donating to Ron DeSantis' campaign, hosting fundraisers for these guys. He also hosted a fundraiser for Ro Khanna too, by the way. We went through all the receipts. So the thing is like, here he is criticizing people hanging out with billionaires and taking billionaire money, but he's leaving out that he's doing the same thing. That's important for you to know. For those of you who are voters, you should know that. I don't care if you like RFK Jr. or not. You can't look past that. Just keep it real.
My job over the past 40 years has been suing government agencies for corruption. And and representing people, 10,000 families in Smelter, West Virginia, who are poisoned by zinc and lead from a DuPont smelting facility. Let's say 1,000 families I'm now representing in Columbiana County, Pennsylvania, or Ohio, for the Norfolk Southern spill. The 10,000 families I represented in the DuPont case who were poisoned by PFAS and PFOAs, and the 40,000 people I represented in Monsanto. And I end up, and fishermen who I've, represented, as you know, my whole life on the Hudson and other places. And I end up seeing how people live. And I've seen the disintegration of the American dream and the American experience. I've seen not only the social and economic deprivation that now exists in this country that's like what I saw in Latin America when I was a kid. I never dreamed I'd see it in this country.
So he's talking about the environmental issues that he's seen happen, I guess originally first in other countries in Latin America, but he's now starting, as time went by, he started to see that happen in the United States as well. So yes, he's an environmental lawyer. He's talked a lot about these issues in reference to how, these companies like Monsanto, and also if we want to talk about East Palestine, Ohio, Norfolk Southern, the railroad companies, like how they just get away with poisoning these communities. And it's just like, there's no real accountability, man. Like people die because of these health issues that they develop because of the environmental pollution they've caused. Erin Brockovich is someone who's really passionate about this issue. That's how she came to be pretty well known, pushing back against an environmental issue. So I think that that's all great that he is fighting for those things. And to that point, this is why I say he should support universal health care for everyone. Now, he mentioned on Breaking Points that he agrees with everybody having health care, but he said it would not be feasible. And no, it is feasible. Economically, it is feasible. Because the thing is, this has been shown time and time again, even when Bernie Sanders was running and the professor who actually did the financial study, they showed you that you actually save money by giving everybody health care, then keeping these big pharma companies in position. And also in reference to his position, how he feels about the jab, and he does criticize, big pharma about that. Then at the same time, he knows that big pharma is corrupt. So if you know that big pharma is corrupt, why would you even be for a public option? That still gives them the opportunity to still be corrupt and exploit people. So that's the thing. That's another thing for me where I don't make the connection there. If you've seen people go through environmental poisonings, like in their communities, and developing health issues because of it, and you see like the toll that big pharma has had on this country, especially with his criticism in reference to the jab, then to me, it's a no-brainer that you would support universal health care for everybody. Like I wouldn't even stop and say this is not feasible. It is feasible because the studies have already been done that economically we can do it. So what's it really about? Let's continue.
57% of Americans can't put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency.
How scary is that?
35% of people in this country do not make enough money to pay for basic human needs for transportation, housing, and food. So they have to make choices every day. They have to listen to the baby crying in the room next door and have to wonder whether that baby is $30 sick or $40 or $200 sick before they bring him to a hospital. They have to choose between heat and food, between medicine and food. My wife.
See, there he is again. He's talking about the cost of living. He's talking about people having to choose between heat and food, between medicine and food. So again, it's a no-brainer for me. You should support universal health care. Also, what is his policy in reference to the minimum wage? Like, what does he think the minimum wage should be? He's talking about all these economic issues, how some people are barely making it. These are some things to think about.
My wife and I had this discussion. My wife grew up very, very poor. And until she, got a break by getting the job from Larry David on Curb Your Enthusiasm, she was living in
By the way,
poverty.
she's great on that show.
Thank
She really
you.
is.
Yeah.
You like that show? Good show.
And she said,
Bebel, what was that? What does that even mean? we talked about legacy admissions last night. So Pebbles said legacy admissions via politics. Oh man.
she said to me, the whole time I was living paycheck to paycheck. And she said,
By the way, so was I.
Yeah.
I can identify with that.
and that is
Not fun.
It's frightening. And she said, we were talking about how depression and mental illness rates and suicide rates have risen just dramatically in this country. And she said, well, being poor makes you depressed because you're scared all the time and you think there's something wrong with you. And, this is not the America that
Let me ask you, but I hear everything. I'm listening very closely to what you're saying, and you're saying that we can do better, and I agree with you. We have nearly, over 60% of this country living paycheck to paycheck. The average American owes $55,000 in debt. People are cashing in their pensions to get bare necessities, or they're putting stuff on credit cards at, 22.5% interest rate. Now,
He lost me at the word pension. Because I don't know what anyone in my generation that got a pension. He lost me with that word. Does this still happen? Those of you who are familiar and you've had pensions, like this, is this still a thing? People still get a pension? Hugo says not many have pensions. Yeah, I don't know anybody that has a pension. Not anyone in my age group. Where he says pensions, those were the days, LOL. Ravina said, I lost mine in 08. Damn. Eric says 401ks now at best. Yeah, I know about 401, but he lost me at that part.
I would argue that's part of the Biden economy. And the only difference where we might separate here is whether or not you think it ought to be a government program. I think it's free market economies that inspire entrepreneurs, and you have the freedom and the ability to bring goods and services to market versus.
You have the freedom to do that when you have the startup capital to do so. That's the piece that they always leave out. Like, people don't just become an entrepreneur just out of nowhere. It takes money to make money. So you usually have to get a loan from a bank if they'll give you one, or you have to get money from somewhere else if you don't already have it. This is why when people brag and say that someone is a self-made millionaire, and I'm like, and they came from a family of wealth, like people say this about Kylie Jenner. I'm like, how is she self-made when her family, the wealth came from the family? So it's not something that's easy to do. When people bring up the entrepreneurship, that piece always gets me, as if you could just do this just like that.
Say the government giving you your bare necessities. I mean,
yeah, of course. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to live on the government dole. And it is. I mean, we don't have free market capitalism in this country. We have corporate crony capitalism.
So you notice most of the people in the audience, it seems like they agree with them. He said, we don't have free market capitalism in this country. We have crony capitalism in this country. To me, capitalism is capitalism. I mean, there's still exploitation of the workers. Free market capitalism, there's exploitation of the workers. Crony capitalism, there's exploitation of the workers. People can come up with all these fancy names for it, but it's still capitalism.
We have a system of cushy socialism for the super rich, and this brutal, kind of brutal, savage, merciless capitalism for the poor, and it's all designed to strip mine the middle class of this country of all of their equity, all of their assets, and move it to the upper echelons. And the COVID lockdowns were the final straw. COVID lockdowns, we created $1 billion a day, and this was Trump and Biden. Of 500 days of lockdowns, we created $1 billion a day. We moved $4 trillion from the American middle class to the super rich.
And we pause this part here and we'll go to the next part because this is where he gets into the discussion that we can't really dive into on YouTube. But I want to go to the next part in just a second. But that point there was true. And we talked about this before, that during the pandemic, a lot of these CEOs actually doubled their wealth. While you may have lost your job or you may have lost your business, there were a lot of small businesses that closed here in Boston. Some of them that were tourist attractions, they couldn't manage to, continue to pay the rent for the building because they weren't making any money. They weren't bringing any money in because everything was closed. So he's right about that, how they continue to make a lot of money, especially companies like Amazon. Now, I want to dive into this second part of the town hall here. This is where you guys let me know how you feel. I feel like this is where Sean Hannity tries to do a gotcha. And I wasn't feeling this at all. Like, listen to this.
I want to go back, and this drives me nuts, because I've been making the case that our current president, I don't think he knows today's Tuesday. He could not sit with me as you are and have this conversation, in my view. I think he is physically weak and cognitively a mess, and nobody wants to say it except the few of us. I want you to look at this tape and tell me if you think he's fit for the job. Take a look.
Let's go look at the world. We cheer for Muslim athletes like Kareem and Joan Shengang, Shanga Kawawa. Ban on transgender Americans.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate
it's great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere. It's a very exciting day around here. We'll have reaction.
I met alone with him, just he and I, and a simultaneous interpreter 68 times, 68 hours, 68 times, more than 68 hours. All right, God save the Queen, man.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We really appreciate it, and we love you. Thank you.
I might add, if I didn't, I'd be sleeping alone. That's explain. I better explain that. Some don't know. My wife's a Philly girl. All right, where are we going? Well, we're going to win, and we're going to help. We have plans to build a railroad from the Pacific all the way across the Indian Ocean.
Notice that he has a lot of examples here about Joe Biden's cognitive decline.
By the way, I met with who are those guys that fly over shortly? You heard of them, haven't you?
Okay. Do you believe that he is physically, mentally, cognitively strong enough to lead our country? This world is a dangerous place. Robert Kennedy Jr., you know that this is a dangerous place. Is he cognitively strong enough to be your president?
Well, he's never been very good with words.
So you see what he did there? You see how he answered that question? Well, he's never been very good with words. Instead of just saying like, no, he's not fit to be president right now. I would have no problem saying that, by the way. I have a feeling that, Marianne wouldn't say it either. I have a feeling that like their campaign staff or whoever their campaign managers have probably told them, don't go there because then it'll be used against you. That's what I'm assuming is probably happening. But I would have no problem saying that.
All right, you get an A+ for that answer. Is he up to the job? First of all, let me ask, how many of you here think he is not up to the job? Let me hear. Now, I know that there's a reluctance for politicians, and you're a Democratic Party guy. You said that at the censorship hearing where they censored you. And you devoted your life to things you believe in, and it's probably hard for you to say that. But do you really think he's up to the job?
No, but I'm not reluctant to say that for partisan reasons, Sean. Okay. What I've tried to do during this campaign is avoid personal attacks on people. I will say,
That's the same thing Marianne Williamson said, by the way. Avoid the personal attacks. Just FYI. I think they all got the same PR talking point.
Say whether he's up to it or not, whether he's making his own decisions, the decisions that are coming out of the White House are bad decisions.
Right.
And, you know, the Democratic Party does not censor people, in my experience. We're not the party of war. We're not the party of the neocons dictating foreign policy. We're the party of the middle class, and we're the party of working people. And
no, we're not. See, that's the thing. RFK Jr. is still living in this timeline where the Democratic Party was for working class people, where they wanted the working class people to feel empowered. He's still living in that timeline. We're in a different timeline now, where the Democratic Party are warmongers, just like the Republican Party. They are pro-censorship. Things have changed. They are corporate, you know, like they're pro-Wall Street first. They're pro the military industrial complex. Like this idea of, you know, this irks me almost as much as the people who want to reform the Democratic Party, you know, like the Justice Democrats and like that progressive strategy of putting progressives in the Democratic Party to reform the Democratic Party. This irks me just as much as that. Like the people who want to take this party back to a time when they remember it was actually more better for working class people or for middle class people. Like those days are gone. You want to take the Democratic Party back to a time before super PACs and PACs. We have super PACs and PACs. Things are so different now. I mean, it's a corporation. We've covered this. I interviewed the DNC fraud lawsuit attorneys. The DNC is a corporation. They argued this in court. It's not like this is not a political party. You know, this really isn't like some just organization that you join and you're like, hey, we're going to do things fair. No, it's a corporation. So how do you take a corporation back to that time period? You can't, it's owned. Let's continue here.
that's not where the party is anymore.
I would tell you, here would be my agenda, and I think you agree on some of these things. I want to secure our borders. I believe every American has the right to be safe and secure in their town, in their city. That means we have to have law and order.
Pay very close attention to what Sean Hannity does here. We're going to go back for just a little bit because he's trying to, well, let me let him just, you'll see what he's trying to do. Pay close attention to this.
Here would be my agenda, and I think you agree on some of these things. I want to secure our borders. I believe every American has the right to be safe and secure in their town, in their city. That means we have to have law and order. It's a prerequisite to pursue happiness.
Let me pause right there before he finishes mentioning the other things that he agree with. So he points out, you know, secure border, and then he mentions safety in your towns and says that means we need law and order. Notice the way that he's framing it. He's framing it in such a way as though it doesn't sound that bad, right? So those two things that he just mentioned in reference to his position on immigration and his position on law enforcement, those are conservative positions. Now watch what he continues to do. Watch this.
I want an economy that is thriving, an opportunity economy where everybody, regardless of where you start in life, can climb that ladder to success. I want a mean, tough, kick-ass, killer military that would serve as a deterrent to any hostile regime that might have ill intentions towards us.
Pause right there. Those two. So he mentions he wants a kick-ass military that, and he notice how he frames it. He frames it in a way that I want this kick-ass military for defense, just in case some other country that's hostile comes after us. Notice how he's framing it. He's softening the language to make it more appealing. So pay close attention to that. In other words, he supports the military industrial complex. That's also a conservative. Well, actually, no, not just a conservative position nowadays. Both parties agree with that. The other position that he mentioned, oh, shoot, I forgot. Hold on. Ball sacks. Sorry, guys. I don't want to go back too far. Okay.
Down in their city, that means we have to have law and order. It's a prerequisite to pursue happiness. I want an economy that is thriving, an opportunity economy where everybody, regardless of where you start in life, can climb that ladder to success.
Okay, that was the other piece. So, in other words, what he's basically saying is he wants capitalism. He wants capitalism to continue. But again, notice the way that he's framing it. He's softening the language to make it sound more appealing to even to people who may not be conservative, right? Wait for the kicker.
I want a mean, tough, kick-ass, killer military that would serve as a deterrent to any hostile regime that might have ill intentions towards us. I believe in peace through strength with all my heart. Control our borders, all these things. I believe that educational school choice.
Educational school choice. So again, let me rephrase that. What he's really saying is the whole decision that happened with the Supreme Court overturning affirmative action in reference to university admissions, he agrees with that. He's on board with that. So you have to pay attention to the framing, because when they say just, oh, I believe in school choice, yeah, that sounds like, oh yeah, I would like to pick what school I want to go to, but that's not what he's talking about. So you have to, this is sneaky, but wait till you hear what RFK Jr. does. Wait for it.
We agree on these things?
Yeah, we agree on all those things.
No.
That part right there. Do we agree on these things? And RFK Jr. says, yes, we agree on all those things. So what Sean Hannity just did, he basically got RFK Jr. to admit that he agrees on conservative positions. I hope everybody noticed that. Now, what is Sean Hannity's goal when he did that? What was his goal? Why did he do that? How do you do that? Why did he do that? He's running as a Democrat. Why did he do that? So that doesn't help RFK Jr.'s case when people say RFK Jr. is actually a secret right-winger that's running through the Democratic Party. That doesn't help his case. Let me continue.
One area I don't like the fact that America is bearing the brunt and the burden of financing most of the war against Putin in Ukraine. I think we agree on that part. Why isn't Europe, why don't they ever step up and defend their own continent before they ask for U.S. involvement? And why would Joe Biden veto Poland giving Zelensky fighter jets to actually fight to win the war after they were invaded?
Yeah, but when you change this country, and this is what we've seen time and time again, they'll have that position in reference to Russia and Ukraine. But when you change the country and the country is China, all of a sudden it's, oh yeah, no, we need to stop them. What I don't want for people to happen, this is what I do not want to happen. I'm already seeing this happening. That's why I'm stressing this. I don't want people, when they hear this rhetoric, to assume that people are anti-war because they disagree with the war between Russia and Ukraine. Because when you change the country, they're not anti-war. So let's not fall into this trap of, oh, the conservatives are anti-war now. First of all, you can't speak for everybody, right? You can't just say, oh, the Republican Party is anti-war now. Neither one of these parties are anti-war. There may be individuals in those parties that disagree with war, but neither one of those parties are anti-war. But let's hear what he has to say.
Well, the more disturbing thing is that on 2 occasions, the Russians tried to sign a peace agreement with Zelensky.
Do you trust Putin?
Do I trust Putin? No, but that's not. Listen, I've litigated over 500 lawsuits. All of them end up with, or many of them end up with settlements or one kind or the other. And you never trust the guy on the other side. You use language art, and you use the design of agreements.
So Ukraine, to appease Putin, who I think is evil, They've already given up Crimea. It was annexed. So what, now they have to give up the Donbass area?
Ukraine, because of our pushing the Ukraine into the war on two occasions,
we pushed them into it, or the Putin?
Well, let me tell you. Let me answer your question. Yeah. In 2019, France, Germany, and Russia all agreed to the Minsk Accords. That year, Zelensky ran for president. He was a comedian. He had no political experience. Why did he win? Because he ran on one issue, signing the Minsk Accords.
Just going to pause here for just a second. I think going forward, and all of them have done this. All these candidates have done this so far. I think going forward, when they mention the Minsk Accords, and especially if they're doing a town hall or interview, I think they need to explain to people what that is. The average American has no idea what you're talking about. I'm just keeping it real. Like, the average American that is not as knowledgeable about Russia-Ukraine conflict, or isn't even paying attention to this, most of them have no idea what RFK Jr. or Marianne or Cornell are saying when they mention Minsk Accords. They have no idea. Most people are sitting back like, well, what? What does that mean? What is it? So I think it would be good for people to start breaking that down.
As soon as he got in there, Victoria Nuland in the White House told him he couldn't do it. Then Putin sends 40,000 troops in. That's not enough to conquer the country. Clearly, he wanted us to come to he wanted somebody to come to the negotiating table. Zelensky came to the negotiating table, signed a new agreement that was the Minsk Accords 2 in 2022, and that would have allowed Donbass to stay, and Lugansk to remain as part of Ukraine. We said Putin signed it, Zelensky initialed it, and Putin, in good faith, began withdrawing troops from the Ukraine. What happened? We sent Boris Johnson over there to torpedo it, because we don't want peace we want the war with Russia.
See, this is why they don't want to have primary debates. Can't get that message out there. And you guys know that Russia-Ukraine will be a topic, obviously, on the debate stage. Can't have Bobby Kennedy making that statement about Russia-Ukraine conflict. What would Joe Biden say? What is he going to say? We'll go on a little bit more here.
Why are you blaming America's role in this? And look, Putin to me is an evil, murdering dictator thug, and when he leaves this earth, nobody's going to miss him. Let's be honest. However, I think that Europe has a responsibility to protect their continent, and yet it always seems to fall on the United States. Joe Biden has committed all these billions of dollars that we can't afford, and he's not fighting the war to win the war. I don't believe in fighting wars half-assed. If you're going to fight a war, you go in, overwhelming force, you beat them, you get the hell out. That's it.
See, there's that pro-war rhetoric. See that?
And only if it's provoked. Putin did not need to invade a sovereign country, in my view. Is Zelensky perfect? Nope. I don't think he is either. I agree with you on that part. But America's role, I think, should be dictated first by Europe. And they've got to defend their continent. And they haven't stepped up, in my view.
Yeah.
But to say, only if it's provoked and he feels like it wasn't, there's obviously something that Sean Hannity is missing here. That obviously Tucker Carlson got right. But Tucker Carlson is no longer there.
I mean, I don't think most of the European countries wanted the war either. It's clear what happened, which is that, from the beginning, we promised in 1992, the Russian leadership said, we will move, this was Gorbachev, said when the Soviet Union, he was getting ready to dismantle the Soviet Union, and he said, we're going to allow you, we're going to withdraw 400,000 troops from East Germany, and we're going to allow you to reunite Germany under NATO, which is a hostile army. That's a huge concession for them. The one commitment that we want, is what the Russians said, is that you will not move NATO to the east. James Baker, who was then Secretary of State under Bush, famously promised, we will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. Well, since then, we've moved it 1,000 miles in 14 countries. Now, when we started that plan in 1997, Bill Perry, who was the Secretary of Defense under Clinton, said to the Clinton administration, if you move NATO to the east, I'm resigning because you are forcing the Russians to come to war with us. George Kennan, who's the most important diplomat in American history, the architect of the containment policy during World War II, said the same thing. You do not need to make an enemy out of Russia. Russia should be treated the way we won the Cold War.
It gets complicated. Let me ask you a question.
And we'll go ahead and stop there. But again, if you want to see the full, because Case Study posts the entire town hall here in this clip. If you follow Case Study QB on Twitter, you can watch the full thing. I couldn't play, obviously, the stuff about the jab. I could not play on here. You guys know YouTube tripping with that. But I thought those were very valid points there towards the end. This is the piece that is often left out. The fact that there were negotiations or they tried to make negotiations in the beginning. The fact that they were provoked, that is true. Like I've said this before, it's no, one bad guy. I feel like there's bad on all sides, right? But this is something that I feel that NATO did want to happen. They wanted this war to happen. So I thought that was really good there towards the end. I had a couple of criticisms, like obviously you heard them. But yeah, I just wanted you guys to see what Sean Hannity was trying to do there. And I didn't like that. I don't like the sneaky sneak. I don't like the sneakity. Thank you for the super chat, FWC. The only thing we should be talking about now is how the US is about to start World War III. We were just talking about that. Team Orca, he thought his family legacy would carry him. Hard Lenses in the chat says, now hit the like button for Sabs. Thank you so much, Kit. Thank you, Marvin. Cash rules the nation. Politic parties are just contractors. Thank you, Frank. That man said, God save the queen. I have died several slow deaths. Okay. And thank you for the super sticker, Leslie. Thank you so much.